It came down to the wire, but Elon Musk got his way after a standoff over the government funding bill. Joining us now to talk over Musk's influence over Congress, former Senator Heidi Heitkamp. She's the director of the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics and a CNBC contributor. And former Congressman Jeb Hensarling served as chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, chaired the Republican conference. We'll start with Senator Heitkamp. I don't know. I tried to talk to you about this. You're from, North Dakota, kind of Midwest. You got the accent that we talk about, but you're down to earth. You're down to earth. Joe Manchin on Face the Nation said that the Democrat Party brand is toxic at this point, and he accused it of trying to mainstream the extreme in social issues. You didn't listen to me. You didn't listen to either Joe. You didn't listen to. Is there some truth to that? The last election was something. It was who made up repudiation? That was Sarah Palin, which is partly repudiation and partly refuting, and it's a damn good word. So it was a pretty big refudiation, was it not?
Well, let me tell you, I know in the lead-in you said Elon Musk won. I'm not sure that's so true, Joe. I mean, he pulled the plug on a deal that a lot of bipartisan support for. He could have maybe just weaseled around and got that debt limit increased without blowing it up and threatening primaries on people. And so I think there's some relationship mending that needs to happen. Did they pull some of that back? The big part of the spending actually stayed in the bill, which was the disaster relief and the extension of the farm bill, along with disaster relief for farmers. So on the toxic part, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think that we have seen this erosion really since the Tea Party. People want to blame Trump. I don't think that I think that's short-sighted. I think you've got to look as a Democrat at why your message, when you think you're the party of working people, why working people don't want to support you. And so I think that's a big critical discussion that Democrats need to have. I don't think it's going to be led by Joe Manchin, however. So let's wait and see. But I think on the Trump thing and on the issue with Elon Musk, they've got some relationship building. They have 35 people who said no to him before they eventually got a shorter deal.
No, I know. I just wanted to, I don't know. It goes way back between the two. I just wanted to tweak you a little bit on that and see if I could get a rise out of you.
You just remember trying to convince me to become a Republican for about 4 years.
Hope springs the light. I have told you're from North Dakota. The lights have been left on for you, and they're going to stay on. And no questions asked when you come home. No questions. I'm kidding again. Hey, Jeb, Congressman. I think this Elon Musk and President-elect Trump relationship, I mean, people are definitely infatuated and focused, and, it's sort of a new talking point for Democrats in a negative way. I'm not sure it is a negative, but do you think it's a good cop, bad cop type thing? That's kind of the way I see it. I mean, Trump just sits back and Musk says all this stuff. I think if Trump ever told Musk, hey, I think you need to rein it in a little, I think that would happen. I think he might know what Elon's going to say and already gives it his blessing.
Well, I think there's a lot to what you say, Joe, although I don't think President Trump ever shies away from playing bad cop himself. But Elon Musk would probably not have credibility with the Republican base vote if it wasn't for Donald Trump to begin with. So I must admit it's a fascinating dynamic when you put the wealthiest man in the world together with the most powerful man in the world. But, let's face it, there are billionaires that are helping the Democrat Party. There are billionaires that are helping the Republican Party. It just so happens Elon Musk has a rather large platform and a rather large megaphone to get that message out. But I think going forward, and this was not a good look, but neither is finger pointing and hand wringing after an incredible election loss among the Democrats. So Republicans have an opportunity to have better lines of communication, to say the least, between the speaker, between the president and the co-chairman of DOJ.
Think about it, Heidi. You can find some some Democrats, even like Bernie, that look at the, defense spending, hasn't had a audit or in so long. Isn't it really kind of bipartisan to say we should try to do something in terms of money that's not being well spent?
I think it's absolutely fascinating. And I've been asked to criticize Doge, and I don't. I mean, it's like, okay, let's find out what they come up with. Let's see what their ideas are. I will tell you this, Joe, it's a lot harder, as you saw in this last go around with the CR. It's a lot harder than what probably Elon Musk thinks. To actually cut these budgets, especially when the leader of your party has said, I'm not going to touch entitlements like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And so it's going to be really interesting. And I think Democrats should approach it with an open mind. Ironically, in my stead, one of the first people to support a Trump idea was Elizabeth Warren, who said he wants to cap interest rates on credit cards. Let's go. And so I think looking for those things that are populist on both sides, that you can both agree on, could be a good look for the American public, but also a really good look for the Democratic Party.
Jeb, you were in the House. What's going to happen in the next year, do you think? It's going to be as crazy as it was for the last couple of years?
Well, governing is difficult, and governing with historic thin majorities is even more difficult. So I think even President Trump is realizing this when you had, 30 plus Republicans essentially vote against a bill that he had endorsed. And so there are going to be some schisms between, let's say, the fiscal hawks, if you will. I would say they're probably an extinct species in the Democratic Party, perhaps President Company accepted. But they're somewhat of an endangered species in the House, but they had their voices heard loud and clear. So the entire Congress and Republicans are the ones who are governing in the House and the Senate are facing this so-called fiscal cliff with the expiration of many of the provisions of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the debt ceiling. You have an expiring provision dealing with discretionary caps. There is a lot going on, and there's basically $5 trillion worth of fiscal issues that are going to have to be dealt with. And so it's going to be quite a challenge for Speaker Johnson. And once in my House career, I thought about running for Speaker, and looking at what he's doing, it was a good decision not to do it.